guys. We'll get started here. We're a little bit late. We're just dealing with some housekeeping things. So we'll call the meeting to order. Can I have roll call, please?
Dogan,
Here.
Borman,
Here.
Hurst,
Here.
Mervika,
Here.
Pappas. Here. Wasson.
Here. And I'll need a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
So for this, before we take a vote on it, I have a couple things that we're going to change. Under action reports, under the consent agenda, we are going to pull number 8 and number 9 out of consent agenda. And then another thing that was brought up is under 13, there's mention of a roll call. We are going to do that roll call within, as we do a roll call for all the items under consent agenda. So that will be included in that. And then under 12, there was a question. It is for the 24-25 school year. I think, is that everything? Did I cover everything?
Yep.
And then,
And that we're not going into closed.
and then, yeah, one other item. We will not be going into closed session at the end of the meeting. So with that, all in favor of approval of the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I want to take a moment and say thank you for everybody here tonight and everybody who's attending through our streaming. And now we will have public comment. Our first one is Dick Terrell.
Press the button, please.
All right, great.
Thank
Green
you.
light. All right, that's good. So, it's good to see everybody doing it again. You know, you're settling in. So I'm here to bring up one very specific thing, and maybe you guys have discussed this or not, or aware of it. I think the school district should look into buying the now closed Cornerstone Church in downtown Plato there. And you could put all the 3- and 4-year-olds that the school district deals with in a centralized location. It would free up a couple, I don't know how many, 2-3 classrooms in every grade school building. And plus it would centralize that whole function. Those students are there for extra help. I think it's just a once in a lifetime opportunity there. I've been in that building. You could use it almost immediately as a school. You've all seen it. There's a big hall. They never built a real church inside of it. There's a big hall, and then there's a whole wing of classrooms. Probably got a commercial kitchen. It's not that old. It's probably fairly legal. I just think it would be a smart thing to do, or at least to look into it. And it's going to free up space in the other grade schools, if you put everybody in there. It's not going to make any difference from a bus situation. I was a bus driver for 15 years. It's all little buses with those kids, and you could probably put, depending on how big it is, other than the 3- and 4-year-olds, kids, special need kids that are they're never coming in on the regular bus. They've got a really whole separate situation. They all go to the different doors at the grade schools. And it sits on 20 acres. Sure be nice to have a brand new building on 20 acres. And I think it would help alleviate a little bit the current problem with the crowding in the grade schools. It's not going to make it go away, but it would help it. Plus, you got the economy of scale and have all that staff in there in one building. Somebody calls in sick, it's not 25% of your staff, it's 5% of your staff. And I would think that it's something to look at. And so I wanted to point that out. I don't know if you guys, most of you are new on the board, have even thought about that or not. But It's a nice building. I'd hate to see it, we could use it, I think. So, I guess that's my comment here.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. PK, correct?
Good evening. Just to pick up briefly on that previous gentleman's comment, that Cornerstone Church location is pretty central in terms of where a lot of the population in the district is, and it's got a bunch of convenient access routes, so it might be something worth looking into to see if it's an option to alleviate some of the capacity issues that we have. I came up here to talk about two things. One is retention and culture, which you have on your new business agenda, and I'd suggest one thing to do, particularly over the summer leading into the fall, is to develop some board reporting on the staffing condition in the district. Where are we seeing gaps in our sort of current staffing with attrition? Where do we see gaps in terms of the pipeline of interviews that we're having over the summer? And then what are the mitigation plans, right, to address those going into the fall? So I think that's something that could be helpful and kind of alleviate stresses that might occur as we go into August and September. Second thing would be to engage a third party to conduct an employee satisfaction survey on an annual basis, something that's independent. Staff can feel comfortable expressing their opinions honestly because they're not going to be personally identified. And then the third thing would be, it's going to be some time before you might potentially implement that, but you could take a look at the union's 3 surveys. One of them was actually a survey intended to provide feedback to the board last year, and in the verbatims, I think this has been discussed at a board meeting in public comment last year, but some of you maybe were not there. The verbatims include a lot of really useful information, insight into what has been driving dissatisfaction among staff, and some of those things are pretty actionable. Like those are things that you could actually address, right, going into the fall, and I think those would be good signs. So those are my 3 suggestions on retention and culture. The other topic I want to talk about is the district handbook, the student family handbook. It's very comprehensive. I read as much of it as I could coming into this meeting, and it occurred to me that there are a few topics, picking up on things I've talked about before, that we could add as a section in the handbook that I think would help to inform families who have those advanced learners. So one of those things is to include the procedure for, or the steps for, early entrance to kindergarten and first grade. Legally, the district is required to communicate that in some way to all members of the community each year, and then putting in the handbook would be like the most obvious place to look for that. That's one. Second is when kids are transferring in from other school districts where they're enrolled in advanced programs, what's the protocol, right, in that transfer process that parents should follow to get them appropriately placed in our district, mapped correctly. And then third, how to engage the building-based team. So when you have a kid who is ahead of the curriculum, but maybe that hasn't been proactively addressed by the teacher or the administrators, as a parent, how do you engage the building-based team to determine if some type of differentiation may be appropriate for your kids? So those are some things that I think would be helpful to include in the handbook and make it stronger. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so should we do 8, 9? Oh, yeah, one more. Go ahead, Jim.
Hi there. I look at the agenda and there's quite a bit there. So I'm just hoping that you guys really do have a chance to go over everything. I know sometimes the finances and stuff are there's a lot there. So I guess my thing would be that if you have people you can reach out to maybe to help you go over some of this stuff, because I know most of you have full-time jobs, and to read an agenda over a weekend is kind of rough. So anyway, that was just maybe a suggestion, because I'm seeing in such as county board meetings, they don't really take a lot of time to look at things, and they go and they end up approving something, and then later on people may have dug things up that perhaps had they known what was really there, they may not have approved it. So it's just a suggestion about that. And that's all. And just kind of, how do I want to say, eagerly awaiting more good things, I guess, from here. And because I'm seeing things that are getting addressed, so I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Go with those first. Run them back for the- Okay. All right, so for our action reports, we pulled number 8 and 9 out of the consent agenda, and I'll just ask Dana to go over who the committee members are, and then we might need to ask for volunteers from board members.
So this is an annual thing that we request every year. Typically, the auditors like to speak to a board member, sometimes two. Typically, it's just one. So they go over fraud questions or any concerns that the board may have about any of our finances. Usually, we get 2 volunteers and then 1 person for the phone call, and then I just let them know who is picked or who wants to be on that. So, and we would need it for Central and Northern Kane, and typically in the past, whoever volunteered for Central did Northern Kane as well. Similar questions for both.
Do we have any board members that would like to volunteer to be on?
And it's typically less than a 5-minute phone call, from what I've heard. I'm not part of those calls, they're directly with you guys, so I'm totally out of it. But from what I've heard from prior board members that have done it, it's maybe a 5-minute phone call.
Nobody else is volunteering, I'll volunteer.
Anyone else interested?
I can do it
What's
too.
that?
Chad, I'll do it too.
Okay. So Jeff said it as well.
Yeah, if Chad wants to, that's fine.
All right. Chad and Andy, and then we need to vote on that, right? Does that need to be a roll call vote for that, since it's under consent?
You can put, then you can go ahead and now do just a voice vote for that, because you're not
Okay.
spending any money, so you can just do a voice vote to appoint
Okay.
the 2 of them to that.
So all in favor of Andy and Chad being appointed to the audit committee? Aye.
Aye.
And then now for the remaining items under the consent agenda, I need a motion and a second on those.
Second.
Any questions or comments on those? And can I get a roll call vote, please?
Gorman,
Yes.
Hurst,
Yes.
Ravicka,
Yes.
Pappas,
Yes.
Dogan,
Yes.
Wasson.
Yes. For committee reports for DLT, a couple of us were able to attend that, but I'm going to ask Jeff Gorman if he wouldn't mind giving a brief update from that meeting.
So the board had a retreat, Morgan will remember, probably, 6 months ago. We were the last to see the strategic plan for the district. Administration started it. Went to a group of teachers to look at. They reviewed it all, put it together. And so DLT and CAT passed it around to them a few months ago. We started both of those again. But DLT, we reviewed that again, went over it with those on the committee. Looked at goal 1, KPI 3 specifically, so there's some discussion there. Goal 2 really didn't have much discussion because it had to do with additions, changing boundaries, and so we're kind of, when it was created, the referendum was going on, so obviously that didn't pass, so we'll discuss that as we get closer, or once we figure out what's going on with it. Goal 3, we discussed. Goal 4, if Kyle wants to add anything about the goals, but we just went through it all because any additions, any modifications, Kyle asked that they be emailed to him by the end of June or mid-June, just so he could finalize it, give it to us again, so we'll review it, and the idea is to get it all done by August, September, just to have it set in stone. It's a 5-year plan. That'd also be good for the new superintendent to come in and, we have this done and ready, so that's pretty much took up the whole time, so I don't know if you want to add anything or.
Yeah, you was you.
Yeah, that was pretty good recap.
Yeah, and the goal being is that we were working on the KPIs, key performance indicators for various goal things. So we had some some documented things, some metrics as we measure and look through those strategic plan goals. We didn't look at necessarily changing the actual goals themselves. We are going to be looking at, as we talked about at both CAT and DLT, perhaps updating some of the objective measures, just because some of those were a little dated given the current realities. And then we will get back to the board and the committees with some of the updates to that, with, again, as Jeff said, hopefully get something in place by certainly September. It's good for a new district, or for a district who's searching for a superintendent, to have that strategic plan of where you're trying to go, what's your guiding star for who you're wanting to be. It'll help the board have some focus. It will also help focus new people who are interested in this district, to ensure, number one, that they align. And of course, one could argue that anybody who's looking for a job will align themselves, but you do want people to be able to buy into that, right, and buy into the direction. And they may add some things, as I said there. It's written in sandstone, not marble, right, so that things can evolve over time as the district meets certain things. You may say, you know what, this KPI is not really giving us what we are wanting. How can we adjust that? But our goal is to put a stake in the ground, right? Here's where we're at. Here's how we want to move forward. And then you would take a stand, say, this is what we want to move forward with as the strategic plan for the district.
Great. Thank you very much. And then for the community advisory team, Andy, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, actually, just a little bit of repeating of what we just talked about. We all, on May 29th, the community advisory team had, I think, about 11 of us there, in addition to Jeff and myself and Dr. Schumacher. A couple of you in the audience who are on that committee were also there, so thank you for attending. Again, had some good discussion, not only about a few of the specific goals in the strategic plan draft, but also, excuse me, some of those key performance indicators. So we know how are we going to measure this stuff. So got some good feedback. Kyle was able to circulate the document and those KPI for comments. And as he mentioned, we're on track to try to finalize towards the end of the summer. And that was all we discussed.
Great, thank you very much. Now we have a special presentation regarding the EFE, from the EFE director for an update regarding EFE 110 and career tech.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Terry Sturl. I'm the director for Northern Kane County Regional Vocational System. Working with Dr. Schumacher and Dr. Powell, we realized we had a lot of new board members, and not everyone knows what Northern Kane is. You've seen us on the board agendas, so we wanted to kind of go through a little bit for you and kind of give some descriptions of what we do. So back in the 1980s, the state of Illinois and the State Board of Education started the Education for Employment systems. There are 54 systems across the state of Illinois. So ours is covering all the districts that feed into Elgin Community College. And what we do there is we work with the state of Illinois on all our grants and different pieces there. And this was all part of the Perkins legislation that comes from federal dollars. The fiscal agent became 301 back in 2020 after being in U46 since its inception in the late 1980s. Part of our pieces here, grant management and administrative oversight. So working with the state of Illinois on our grant application, going through all of those both federal and state dollars that we get in every year. That grant cycle is getting ready to open up here later this month, so we're excited to have that start again. I also liaise with the State Board of Education, so we meet with them monthly to go over any changes that the State Board of Education might have in career tech education. And then working with the community colleges and the universities in the area, trying to work on getting more dual credit for our students across the area, or what are the things that we can work together on rather than working separately on many different things. Also run industry advisory boards as part of any career tech ed program. I say career tech ed, what you probably think when you were in high school as shop classes, but it has greatly evolved since those times, covering everything from engineering all the way up through healthcare and different pieces like that. So in order to run those programs, we have to and get our grant dollars in, we have to show that we're running advisory boards every year and be able to talk about, are we doing the things that industry is expecting us to do across the area? Another big piece that we're currently in the midst of, I know Mr. Gorman has got some information on this, but we're running summer internship programs across the area. This is our 4th summer in a row that we've now run this program. We are at 240 students out in paid internships across the region in 9 different career areas. So this has grown from 52 students our first year now to 240 this year. So quite a bit of growth there. Along with that, being able to go out and represent the region and represent our school districts across the state and across the country with the many different organizations. So Skills USA is one of those. We have a couple different industrial organizations that we belong to as well, to go out and have meetings with them to make sure we are teaching students the right things in all of those classes. So federal Perkins dollars, we get approximately $600,000 every year from Perkins dollars, and that's split between the 4 different districts. The state of Illinois grants, over the course of the last 5 years, we've grown from just over $1 million to now just over $2 million in grant dollars from the state of Illinois. And that's from working with the districts to streamline all of our processes, make sure that all of our students are counted, we're running the right programs, and having all those pieces in place. So overall, we've added about $882,000 on our annual state grant dollars. And we've brought in an additional $1.5 million over the last 5 years for our school districts. A couple other grants that we have there, and then any other expenses that are not covered through those grant dollars would then be picked up by local funds, working with the districts on those pieces. Want to go really quickly through some, I'm not going to read all of them, but kind of highlight some different programs from the different districts. Pictures here we have, the top left-hand picture is the welding lab over at Hampshire High School in District 300. They're one of only 2 welding labs in the state of Illinois that are American Welding Society accredited. The other one is over at Elgin High School, so we have the only 2 in the state that are accredited right here in this region. The bottom picture is the electrical lab over at Dundee Crown High School, and they have students working on house wiring, fire alarm wiring, and commercial wiring as well. District 301, many of you may have been through the veterinary science lab and going from there. That program is a regional program as well, so we have students from U46 and District 300 that come over and attend those classes here in 301. And then the bottom picture is our business incubator program. And that program there is really kind of like a live Shark Tank for the high school students. So really interesting. If you haven't had a chance to go and see that in action, it's quite the thing to see. District 303, their automotive and their engineering are big programs there. U46, we just had last week, the U46 manufacturing teacher was named Regional Teacher of the Year. And that covers Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Missouri, and Iowa. So quite a big area for him to be acknowledged as Teacher of the Year. Probably, I would say, one of the top 5 manufacturing teachers in the country with that program. And they're the only high school in the state of Illinois and only one of 10 across the country that has a 5-axis CNC mill that students are actually working with in their classroom. And then the bottom piece there is their Beacon Academy, and they run their own television broadcasting, much like our television broadcasting, but they have a really nice off-site truck that they are able to take out and do football games, basketball games. They've gone and done college games across the area, so they've done a really nice job with that program there. So why are all these CTE classes important? When we look at the statistics, only about 25% of jobs across the country right now require a bachelor's degree or higher. So when we talk about these pieces, what is the level of education that students need to achieve in order to get to the career goals that they have? And how can we help them get there? Another big piece there for our, what we refer to as either CTE participants, so students that have taken a class here, a class there, or CTE concentrators, being students that have taken 2 or more classes within the same strand. So 2 automotive, 2 manufacturing, 2 veterinary science. Those students across the state, region and across the state are achieving higher than their counterparts who are not CTE participants or CTE concentrators. Graduation rates are higher, reading and math proficiency rates are higher, post-program placement. The last 2 pieces here on the chart, post-secondary credits and work-based learning. I'll show you a slide here later on that talk about how we're getting students more involved in those pieces and how we're working forward with those. Probably the most important piece though, when we talk about graduation rates for underrepresented populations of students, African-American students in the state of Illinois are at an 80% graduation rate across the state. If you are a CTE concentrator, you're at 95%. So showing that students actually have more to buy into when they're in school. Hispanic students go from 85 to 95%, and then working from there. So our students are graduating at higher rates in these programs than if they did not have these programs in their buildings. Back in 2022, this is actually the end of year 5 for me. So I came in right as COVID was hot and heavy and we didn't have a chance to get out and do a whole lot of stuff. But as you can see here on the bottom 2 quadrants there, attain post-secondary credits, we were under 2% of our students in programs earning college credits. We only had 5.4% of our students getting out and doing work-based learning. So those internship programs I talked about, that's part of the work-based learning. Showing students why they are going out, why are they going to class to learn these things, and what's important when they're out there in the field. This is last year's numbers. So we've now grown to almost 55% of our students earning dual credit. And that's been part of that liaison work with the community colleges, is working with them to make sure classes are aligned, making sure that we have pieces that are set there, to the way they are able to give us credit or give our students credit for those classes. This is going to save our families money as students go through into community college or into trade school programs because they've already taken much of that information. And then that work-based learning jumping from 5.4% to almost 10% there over the course of the last couple of years. So we've really worked hard on trying to get all of those things in place there and make sure that all of that was happening. Trends, that 35% increase there in post-secondary credits over the last couple of years, increased the work-based learning. We're outpacing our counterparts in the southern part of the county. So we continue to work closely with them on how do we work together on things, but then also how do we want to get ahead and have our students with more opportunities overall. We talked about the summer internship program and the numbers we've seen. We have 240 students out in 9 career areas this year. So we have manufacturing, healthcare, we have automotive, we have engineering. It's just a number of things. Anything we can have students are involved in and we want to find spots for, we're always looking for companies to go ahead and get involved. Some pictures there. The bottom left-hand corner is from the Bartlett Police Department. Bartlett Police Department and the Hanover Township Fire Department, or Hanover Park Fire Department, have worked together with us the last 2 years now for a first responder internship program. This summer we have 20 students. We have 10 with Bartlett and Hanover Park, and we have 10 with Elgin Fire Department, Police Department. So those students are really excited there. The picture there, they were getting a briefing before they were going to learn how to search vehicles and go from there on that. The middle picture, WT Group, they're an engineering firm that's here in Hoffman Estates, and they've come on. They actually pay their students that are there interning, so none of that comes out of our dollars. They're actually paying those students while they're there for the work. I think they do roughly 4 to 6 weeks of time there at WT Group, going out to different sites and learning all the different departments there at WT. And then Bucher Hydraulics, they're a company that's here on the north end of Elgin, off of 90 and Randall Road. And they produce hydraulic equipment or hydraulic control units for basically every piece of farm equipment or heavy piece of machinery around the world. And they took 5 students there this summer for that. So we always continue to try to work on finding more of those internship placements. This year, as it shows there, we had over 1,000 students apply for these internships. So having to sit down and sort through all 1,000 applications and who turned in their resumes on time and who did not was a little bit of fun this summer. So, but we have some really high quality candidates that are out there now in the field working, and it's been really, really good to hear the feedback we get from the students and from the companies on those placements. So what does a lot of this mean? Right now with Career Tech Ed, if a student was to drop out of high school, the average cost over the course of their lifetime is about $292,000, meaning that they're going to have lost wages, they're going to need social services, all of these different pieces. So by staying in programs and having higher graduation rates, we can actually calculate how many dollars are coming back into the community. So about right now, about $2.5 million each year coming back into our communities in wages and in lack of social services being needed across the area. So that's really, really key there when we're talking about why it's important for students to have these skill sets moving forward. In the consent agenda item there, you had an item for the Alignment Collaborative. They're one of our main partners. that we work with really, really closely here in the region. They're a 501c3, and they help us because my office is myself and our work-based learning specialist, Todd Stern. It's a little hard to make sure we get out to 11 different high schools at any one time. So we work really closely with Alignment Collaborative to help partner on things such as resume writing workshops, senior job fair. We had about 600 students attend the senior job fair this past April, and many of those students were hired on right there at the job fair. So how do we continue to work on getting students the skill sets they need in these industry areas, but then also then helping find them employment with those programs. For District 301 specifically, last year we had 10 internship spots that were promised. We had 24 that were delivered. This summer we promised 15 and we've delivered 34, I think, or 30, I said 32, but I think it went up by 2 just this past week because we were able to get a couple more placements there for students across the area. I wonder if you had any questions.
I had one question. So you have a massive amount of kids putting in for the internships, but a small number comparatively getting those internships. Why the difference in that?
A number of spots that companies have and are willing to put out for those internship spots. One of the biggest ones, so about 350 or 400 students wanted healthcare. And we only had a limited number of spots at the hospital for those healthcare positions. So we actually have 5 students at Good Shepherd in Barrington. We have 5 students at Sherman here in Elgin for pharmacy technician. We have 10 students that are doing medical rotation, so they'll rotate through 10 different departments within Sherman Hospital. And we have another 12 students for medical rotation, 10 students for medical assistant. So really finding the spots that they're available. The hardest piece there is that the hospital wants to get students in and out before their new residents start July 1. So they only have a limited window and they only want a limited number of students per block in any one day. So how do we get the students in there from roughly 9 till 1 in the afternoon and be able to get those experiences and then work from there? And then working with the hospital to coordinate those schedules and coordinate with the students on those pieces. But we are consistently working to try to find more companies, doctors' offices, whoever, to try to take more students in. Hoffer Plastics is one of the ones we have for manufacturing. They said that they would take 6 students. WT Group took 2. So it's really just a matter of finding companies that will take students and be able to get them in there and be able to place them out in those pieces. It's just a limit to the number of spots and also a limit to the number of dollars we have available as well right now.
Thank you.
I would say if any board members ever wanted to go and see some of the programs and check stuff out and see what's going on across the area, I'm more than welcome to take you out and let you see some of the things, or if you want to go see some internships. Mr. Groman, I don't know how much you've heard so far from your daughter coming home on her experience, but.
No, she really likes it. So it's a great opportunity for her. Very excited. She was super excited to get it and super excited to go. So today was her first day that she went up to Algonquin. So she's on one of the rotation things. So yeah, she's super excited. I think you guys do a fabulous job. They don't work for the district. You know, they kind of work for 4 districts.
I have 4 different bosses with 4 different superintendents, so it can make things a little challenging at times, but it's about finding those opportunities for students, and really the biggest piece is trying to show them the experience they can have now before they go on to college and spend lots of money to go into an item that I find all of a sudden they don't like, and they've wasted all that money going down that path. Also, we have students that have taken programs here that do not need to go to college per se. They can go into a trade school, or they don't have to go to trade school at all. We've had 4 students last summer that interned with LaCurcio Auto Group. They own Chrysler, Elgin Chrysler, Elgin Toyota, Elgin Hyundai. They're on 20 and 59. Out of those 4 students, they hired all 4 last year. So how do we get those students hired on? And one of the students is, I thought, making just over $20 an hour right now as a second-year level 1 technician there. So these are opportunities for our students to really get out there and see what's going on. With the medical rotations, yes, they need to go get some extra schoolwork and things like that, but they're able to talk to people about, hey, where did you go to school at? What did you like about this school or that school? And really get some valuable insight from people on where they need to take those next steps at. All right.
This really is an amazing program. I mean, when you look at what's out there, and when you look at, as Terry even showed within that diagram of, how much college is needed, right? How many programs are needed? And we've seen certainly over the last, 25 plus years, this push towards college. And I'm a proponent of college, but I'm a bigger proponent of opportunities, right? And are we creating opportunities for our students to have multiple choices when they leave CHS, right? Some may decide to go to college and pursue some things within a medical career that they need to do that. They may go into an engineering and want to do that. But they're also able to look at other options that are out there and say, wow, I can do really well. Plumbers make a lot of money, right? Mechanics make a lot of money. Underwater welders, not that we have a lot right here necessarily, but we have a river that runs down here, so I gotta assume there's chances. Underwater welders make a lot of money. And so the opportunities out there, whether it's anything from healthcare to law enforcement, to engineering, to whatever, it's opening up kids' eyes to see like, wow, this may be something that would really interest me. And as Terry showed, when you look at the graduation rates of students who are participating in this, who may not have been as engaged in school or may have seeing that excitement, right, and saying, oh, this is something that I could do. That's what we want our kids to leave CHS with, right? With that opportunities are available for them. Whether they want to go to the military, the trade schools, the workplace, or college, we've prepared them, given them those opportunities to move forward.
We're also working right now on trying to get many of our interns into apprenticeship programs. So we have a number of companies around the area who are willing to pay for students to go to college if they're going to stay for a number of years and work in that trade or work in that business. So how do we show them that those are opportunities, and then how do we get out and talk to parents about those opportunities? I myself have 2 students at home. One's a junior, going to be a senior in college here in the fall, and one's going to be a senior in high school. And the senior in college said that she wanted to go into early childhood education. I said, great, you need to go to college, you need to get a teaching certificate and go that route. My son said he wants to go work in heavy equipment in the trades and work on diesel equipment. And I said, and that's all right too. There are plenty of opportunities out there and plenty of money to be made in that as well. So just showing students and showing families the important pieces here is the biggest piece.
How is this communicated to the students throughout the year?
So multiple different ways. So every district has their own communication piece. So they all have their course selection guides that are out there. And then those course selection guides will include then all the courses that are available. So like we have the manufacturing courses that students can go over to Hampshire or go over to South Elgin and take courses there. And they're denoted in the course guide as that they're offered at another location. We also worked with the community college on offering fire science and first responder classes starting in the fall. And to give you an idea how big of a step that was, Elgin Community College graduated 19 students from their fire science program last year. We have 28 that are starting with them in the fall. So how do we continue to get students that are involved earlier and get them through programs faster? And that was the whole purpose of many of these different laws that are out there right now across the state of Illinois with the Dual Credit Quality Act and Post-Secondary Workforce Readiness Act. So how do we continue to build on that?
Awesome, thank you very much.
Great
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate to make a comment about this?
Go ahead.
Can I?
Go ahead and make a comment. You can do it from right there. I think we can hear you.
Okay. I drove the welding bus for the last 2 years to Elgin High School. The kids were very, pleased with the whole thing. Most of them carried on into it. And one of my neighbors has gone on to ECC, and he was very happy with the whole program. And being at the school district for 15 years, I think this organization, which must have come on board 4, 5, 6 years ago, has done a really good job of the kids now have the opportunity to go to the other schools to get what they want. It's worked out well, and most of the kids were happy with the welding program, and it suited them very well. A few didn't, but that's only normal. But I think this organization, I hauled them all around one year on a bus to visit all the schools, and they seem to know what they're doing, and it's helped. We're still kind of a small school district, and it's good to have someone that has a program that you can just slot yourself into.
Thank you very much for that. Thanks for adding that. All right, moving on to board committees. So I know we've talked about this a few times. All the board members should have the committees in front of them. Right now, we've added kind of a couple tentative ones, and I'll go over them just so that everyone here and anyone online can hear this as well. So for right now, we have the board policy committee. I have Andy and Scott on that committee. For our parent-teacher advisory committee, I have Morgan on that committee with a vacant spot there. For the district leadership team, it's myself and Jeff. For the community advisory team, it is Jeff and Morgan. For the curriculum coordinating council, it's myself. It has it as like one member participating, but if there's another member that would like to, another board member that would like to, I know that we had had two in the past. The facilities committee, which is Jeff and Andy. And then we were looking at adding a board member to our emergency preparedness committee. And I knew Scott was interested, so I'm just gonna put you down. If there's any other board members that are really interested, let me know on that one. And then we had talked about in the past, and speaking with Dr. Schumacher and Dr. Powell, that there's several districts that do have a finance committee. So we're looking as a board, and depending on board interest, on having a finance committee where we could have board members that would serve on that, work with our business manager and to kind of review our district finances. So if there's anybody that would like to discuss that, or if anyone's interested in that, please let me know. And I will add members to that. Secondly, and most of these committees have two members on it. If you are very passionate about a committee that there are already two members sitting on, I'm just gonna ask that we all have a discussion about that, or have a discussion with those other members, and we can move them around based on what our passions are, maybe even what our schedules are, because based on the times of when they meet and how frequently they meet, it may be more difficult for one member to attend than another. And then the other thing I would ask is, as we go through kind of the year and these meetings come up, if you can't make one, maybe just communicate to the rest of the board, hey, I can't. I know Morgan did that recently. She couldn't make our CAT, so she communicated to the board so that Andy could fill in and be there. So I think that's a good way for us to be able to attend a meeting that we're not necessarily on, and we're communicating to each other as well. So does anybody have any comments or questions regarding any of the committees? I know that we are missing one board member, and so these will change a little bit as we're kind of moving forward. But if there's any comments or anything, be open to hear it.
If we do generate a finance committee, I'd join that.
Okay.
So just to note, Andy and Scott, the board policy committee, we're looking at getting a meeting going possibly in July, August. We are working on a new system for our policies through press. In order to do that, we have to have a meeting. So we would need to schedule that, but we'll work on with both of you to find something that works. Just I need to get a date when they can come as well. Somebody from the state can come and meet to do that. So, but that'll be a good thing, because what we're doing is right now our policies are all online, but they're all PDFs online. So we're moving that to an online system that would be more easily to update and to keep current, but also allows us to utilize the system that exists regardless, instead of the countless hours that Mandy has been putting in to keep all of those updated separately. So it'll be a good step, but we have to get you guys together first. So.
And then our superintendent search process, for those that didn't know or that weren't at the meeting or weren't able to follow along, we did hire School Exec Connect. I don't have any new updates. Do you?
No, I talked to you. We talked to them after the meeting and let them know that they were there, that they were the chosen ones, and we will wait for their final contract. They're also going to assist us with the principal searches as well, so that'll be helpful as we move forward with that. So more to come.
Discuss this one.
So the next thing, as we move on to new business discussion, is one of the things that has come up has been looking at kind of the non-union salaries within the district, and how are they comparable to our surrounding neighbors, right? When we're looking at hiring, whether it's teachers or in our non-union areas, we want to be relevant, and we want to be able to attract people to these jobs. So one thing, and Griff and I have talked about, is the possibility of doing a comprehensive study for that. You've seen that in your, I think you saw the, what do you call it? The proposal within your handbooks. Don White is the one whose company does those. He's a retired superintendent. He was in Hinsdale. He was also out in Troy. He's been around for quite a while. Their group has been working quite a bit on these. It's a good way to get statewide data, regional data, large unit district data, because even though we're small, we're 5,000 kids here. We're not as small as sometimes I think people like to think we are, even though the houses are far apart between here and West Eldon, right? So this is a larger district than most people realize when they are looking at it, land-wise and student-wise. So this would be an opportunity. It's there for you to look at in your July meeting. You can put that on if it's something that you want. Griff can put that on there for approval in July, but at least it'll give you some opportunity to look at it. So I don't know if you have any questions about it today, but they can get something done by the start, close to the start of school, by the August meeting. And so at least looking forward to for the next year. The thing to think about too is, where's the board at in their readiness to take a look at where you end on those and in comparable salaries to where people are here. And they will be very good when, as those are their ways to kind of move into that over years. It doesn't mean you have to all of a sudden make changes right away, but it will be information that'll be helpful for you.
Thank you.
The next one is about, I don't know if this district has normally gone to the III conference in, Jeff, have you gone, or have the people gone from here?
We usually,
So I don't know if the board as a whole has gone, if certain members have gone. We're just wanting to start that discussion because registration, and I know more than I do, Dana, in regards to that, of how that's happened in the past.
Yeah, I think it's always open to all the board. Some years you get more participation than others. Sometimes it's been the same old, so then it gets old. For the people that are on the board for a long time, like Jeff, it's the same topics, so it's.
Do you want to talk about what it is?
Well, it's more for the boards. It's a bunch of training. It's a bunch of professional development. There are hundreds of different sessions that you can pick and choose. Sometimes you want to go to two at the same time, so you got to pick which one's more valuable, or split. You go to this one, I'll go to this one.
Right.
It's just a weekend, 3 days, 2 days, 2 or 3 days of just packed different topics, all the way from, there's some lower level finance ones just to get your feet wet on expenditures and revenues. There's bond stuff, there's legislation, there's a bunch of different topics there. So usually you have to register like really fast to be able to get a hotel near there, because there's only like 3 hotels in that little area and they all book up really fast. So that's the importance of figuring out who can go and who wants to go. So we can make sure we get that block that day that opens.
And some people do go down daily, they come and they go. It's kind of up to you. It's at the Sheridan, it's kind of that Sheridan Swiss Hotel kind of area, right there, Hyatt.
Right.
The III is IASA, IASB, and then your group.
ISBO?
ISBO. So the business officers, the administrators, and the school boards associations, hence the III. That's why it's called that. It is, as Dana said, it's definitely much more beneficial for board members, just because there's a lot of information. You also get the opportunity to network with other board members, and it's kind of interesting to hear, like, oh, that's how how you're doing it there. And a lot of downstate people attend. It's a weekend, right, for them. But for a lot of up here, it depends. People go 1-2 days. Some people stay downtown. Some people don't. Vendors obviously are there just talking about, vendor things as well, because that's always, anytime you get anybody together, there's vendors. But it's a good, if you've not been, it's very informative and very enlightening, right? To learn. It can be a little mind-numbing because there's a lot of workshops, but I think it's good. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jeff.
no, they have pre-conference workshops on Friday, so you can go down Thursday night just because they start at like 8 a.m. You can go down Friday morning too if you're an early riser. But yeah, so they have two, morning and afternoon. You can do one or two. Those are in addition to the conference rate. But those are beneficial. There's like board governance. Sometimes there's, a course on leadership, board president, session, there's different things. So usually there's like 9 classes on Friday. Individual sessions start Saturday. They have a couple keynote speakers. So in the bigger ballrooms, they'll get together and do that. Start out, kick off Saturday, close out Sunday. It's all done by noon on Sunday. But Saturday, you can probably squeeze in 4 or 5 sessions. But yeah, it's super informative. The first few years you're on the board, they do repeat a lot of stuff. All the workshops are all repeated every Friday, it seems like, each year. But yeah, I'd recommend it just to hear, those sessions that are on Saturday, early Sunday. There are attorneys who put those on, and those are more of the definite, like, learning things. And then there's other sessions where, there could be a couple board members putting it on from different districts telling their story about what they did to pass a referendum, so they want to share their views on it, and so that's beneficial. And, a lot of the board members that come from down south are maybe smaller districts, so it's really good for them. We're a little bigger, we've been through more, so, but yeah, it's some good stuff.
I went last year, definitely informative. We went to a couple of different sessions. We had 3 board members, I believe, who went, and we all kind of hit different areas, and then we brought it back to the board and talked about the different things that we each learned and the different sessions that we went to. Definitely informative. Did a thing on expenditures, which kind of, helped me learn a little bit more about, how Dana's job and like how the money can sit, how the money can move around or when it can't move around, different laws. We had one that was put on by board members on teacher retention, bringing back some of those ideas. It was good to hear that we do a lot of what they were talking about, so that was good to hear on that too.
So the registration, the information is in there, so you can take a look in there and just let Angie know, or Mandy for a couple more days, know if you are interested in going, and we can help facilitate that.
I'm definitely interested in going again, but I'll email Angie on it.
I'd like to.
Okay.
Alrighty, so in your packet tonight is the recommended changes for the 25-26 Student Family Handbook. Last school year, the team did a whole revamp of it. Previously, we had an elementary, middle school, and a high school version, and last year the team worked together to put it all into one document. And so there was a lot of revisions in the document last year. But for this year, there are very few revisions that we're putting forth for recommendations. A lot of them have to do with updating language so that it's consistent with updated board policies that we've done, as well as different regulations and things that we get from the state that require us to notify parents of certain things. So those have been updated. We are recommending to remove the names of administrators within the handbook, just because obviously we don't know who some of those are going to be for the upcoming school year. And so just to have it more of a blanket to where they're not specifically listed within the document. Some minor adjustments to like elementary field trip procedures, where all of that is moving online for signing off on those permission forms. Adding some language related to food deliveries at the schools, because we're getting a lot of Uber Eats and DoorDash deliveries to the buildings, and so that's not something that really the building secretaries can manage on a daily basis. So some language related to that, as well as updated language consistent for the doors that have been renumbered at the high school, so everything's consistent there. And then as well as added middle school athletic director contact information, since we have that position now as well. So those are the recommendations for the upcoming school year. So any questions right now?
Nope.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gonna talk about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll kind of jump in.
So the next thing, district finance and use of auditor, some of the conversations that we've been having have been looking at finances, right? Finances are always a question within a district, just looking, it's a lot of money. And people are always interested in kind of how that's happening and what is going on with that. The plan right now, and I think that there's been some conversation for July 7th for Dana actually do a presentation to the board on sort of the district finances, right? And how does it work? How does it look? What's the language? What does moving funds? What are resolutions? Different types of things, and just into a little bit more detail of that on July 7th. The next part of that is that we obviously have auditors that will be coming in this summer, as we do every year, to do all of the auditing on the books. Now, they'll do a presentation in October timeframe after the audit is over, but this is also will be an opportunity during that finance time, is to also, if you have questions about that, like what questions would you want to ask the auditor? And this is kind of on top of the audit talking to a board member. That's kind of a question of saying, hey, do you have any concerns with fraud? Do you have any concerns with separation of duties, et cetera, from a board member standpoint? But you may have questions of, hey, what does it look like, or what are the things, how do you feel the district is in regards to more specific questions that you may have? So at that time, at the July 7th or before, you can actually send any questions. We won't answer them on July 7th. We're trying to find a date that the auditor can come in to be able to have a conversation and sort of share some responses to those questions that you may have from an auditor perspective. Because I think it's important to hear and understand how things are working, but also to see that every year the district has to have an audit done. And every year those things are presented. The results of those audits are always presented to the board in October. So as you are thinking about that, that will be an opportunity to provide some questions ahead of time for the auditor, that hopefully sometime, not in July, the July 20th, they're not available, but if we're looking at that August meeting, that auditor will be able to come in separately from the audit and sort of respond to some of those questions.
I was just going to say, so there's been several questions asked from the community regarding the district finances. So I've already spoken with our superintendents and Dana about having some answers to those questions that the community has already asked. So for the board, so the board knows as well, any questions that you have, get them out there, especially if you're hearing them from community members. So that way we can address any of our questions, not just from us, but, you know, finance is a big thing for our community, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
21st, not the 7th, right?
The 7th is a special meeting.
Seventh
Yeah,
is a special meeting.
that's to interview
But that's for interview.
potential board
Yeah,
members.
but they're going to start out, the beginning of that would be to start out
we
hopefully
are.
and have a presentation, so.
Don't be a minute late.
Need 2 hours of
I mean, basically,
interviewing.
I'm gonna present what I did at CAT, because that was kind of what I
Yeah.
presented to the community. So that's what I was gonna basically start off and maybe tweak it a little bit, but
Gotcha.
it's
Jeff
at-
doesn't want a 2-hour presentation before the
No,
no.
sitting
Before we
period.
do interviews.
before we sit for 2 hours doing interviews.
So you could be.
All right. So, are there any agenda items that any of the board members would like to add to our next meeting? All right, now we're gonna move into there were some,
The parking lot issue.
we're gonna go into that pretty much right now. So, there were some questions and some things added to our agenda for tonight's meeting that the board wanted to discuss and talk about. One of those things is future plans for the district. I know there were a couple board members that had some questions about, like Scott just said, our parking lot for our high school, but if any of the board members would like, I know Jeff had brought up a couple questions, so.
Yeah, no, I mean, we obviously space is an issue. You know, we've passing a referendum 3 times. So if that referendum isn't going to go forward, I think we can't just see how things go and hope that, you know, people stop registering and our space issue goes away. So I think,
Excuse me.
even though we have interim superintendents, we can't just wait a year. You know, we got to keep moving forward. And so I wanted to talk and get some views from you guys just to see where you're at and like start the discussion, because it's a 3-month process to get a referendum out there. So if we're looking at November for a new plan, that means we got a month and a half to decide, which probably won't work, so then we're, out to April. But I think it'd be good for the community for us to discuss this, just so they know we're thinking about it. So, yeah, so school and then parking lot was an issue. Do we need it? That's a question for everybody to answer, I guess.
I know that's not, I mean, that's a question that's posed a lot, I think, within the community, especially as students get into high school. I mean, my daughter's gonna be a sophomore, and that's a hot topic amongst the community there at her age, is just the limitations. And then if there's an event, there's parents that can't, the space is an issue. And I don't disagree with you, Jeff, that like, we still have to move forward. And if that's, we put the addition on last year, is the parking lot part of that? We had talked about, there's stadium upgrades, there's what is the plan for education, staffing, and all of that, I think. But the parking lot, I think, is a easily vetted solution, as opposed to a new campus on 300 acres. I personally don't know what the history is, obviously, if it's been discussed in the past, or what the options are, or what the space there is, but I think it's something that we need to look at.
Well, we got a little bit of an update in the last facilities committee meeting from Dan Holloway about just some of the feasibility issues, or I shouldn't say issues, but a couple of the things that are possible, just from what the district civil engineers looked at. I didn't hear a specific cost or a price tag, but it looks like they were looking at 2 specific options, and those are things that personally, I'd like to see somebody bring some cost estimates forward, because at the end of the day, these are dollars, right, that we've got to choose to spend in one way or another. And I think that's our purview to, especially if it's non-referendum dollars, how is that being spent? What else could we do with that? And, what does that mean? So I'm hopeful that we can get some more information from our district's consultants about what this really means. I know there are a couple different options out there, and just give us the information as a board to help make those decisions. Clearly it's something that people are looking for. I think we all might have different opinions on how much of a need it is versus a want, which is okay. But I think we really just need to understand the finances involved personally.
Sure.
What's been brought up is the west side, everybody knows where the high school addition is, so the drive when you pull into the high school there and go to HBT, so the west side of that drive, so there's parking lot there. So we could either have staff park there, and make them walk farther to get to school, or we have students parked there, but the problem with students is then you have them walking across the road where everybody's coming in, which is usually backed up anyway in the morning. And it's just not as easy as throwing blacktop down, obviously. So yeah, the cost is there. We could get quotes. Is it a need want? But the bigger picture is, where are we going as a district? And is this always going to be a high school? You turn a high school into middle school. Well, you don't need parking in a middle school. So now we got all this blacktop. Well, hey, we can always put mobiles on it, 20 years. So pluses and minuses to everything. So, it's just something to think about. Do we want to put more blacktop in something that may not be a high school forever?
And I think with the hiring of our architects, I think, I know that when we hired them, they kind of told us, hey, it's going to take us a few months to settle in and really understand and know your district and your needs and what your current facilities need, as opposed to what you guys need in the future. I know that we kind of told them, hey, we'll give you a few months. Do we know an update on that? Is there something that we'll go back to them and say, hey, by this time, could you give us a little bit of heads up? Or is there any direction, like with these conversations about, hey, the parking lot keeps popping up and that seems to be a relatively small item in comparison to all the other stuff? Is there something that we could maybe get some feedback from them on?
I agree, Ryan. We have, my understanding is we have one architecture firm working on kind of a capital needs assessment, or in other words, what's the state of what we have right now. And then the other architecture firm is looking at future plans and current and emerging space needs, right? So I'm really hopeful that we're kind of as a board, are brought along in that process. So we're not just hearing this at the very end. So we understand and are able to make comments, and, we may even be able to share with these folks that, hey, this is what we're hearing from the community. Can you add this to the list, or can you look at this, please? So I think, just in general, obviously everybody knows that this is kind of my jam, the facilities thing. But what I'm hopeful is that we're going to get a lot of insight from this planning work that our architects are doing. So we're able to get some recommendations and kind of tease apart those needs and those wants, and figure out, if there is something that the district can finance without going to voters, what's the best use of that money? How do we collectively feel about that? And then if there are wants, my mind kind of goes towards, does that get included in a potential referendum to address space needs, right? So whatever that may look like, and I don't know, that's why we've got professionals, but I think if we can start to look at a solution that provides something for everybody in the district, I think that could make us really successful, and it'll show the community that we're listening.
So contracts are written with the lawyers between the two. So I think the goal was to try to have those done in the next month's board's meeting, maybe. I know I saw one of them go through, the other one I'm not 100% sure. And then I think Mr. Holloway's plan was in August, September to bring them in to kind of show you the progress of where they're even thinking and starting and stuff like that. So I know that we had that one meeting, and then he was going to have them meet with IMEG and Shales McNutt, or whoever the other, Erickson, and get them a meeting. So I'm not sure if that's 100% happened yet on their schedules. And then from that point, they'll start moving and grooving, so.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And to clarify, IMEG is the district's mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer who we hire directly for projects. Shales McNutt, or SMC Construction Services, is our construction manager who bids our projects and provides supervision for projects. And then Erickson Engineering is a civil engineer who works on land planning and site planning. They're all excellent companies. I've worked with them all myself in my business, and real assets to us.
So put a little bit of, reality check on y'all. This, to try to go to referendum in November, with everything that's going on, really can't happen.
I was actually wondering if is there actually an election this November?
Well, there's another question. 25, it's 25, so the next one will be in 26 in November. So, but just to, and I know Jeff was just kind of using a point, and which is valid, right? Like this, there's an urgency to this, right? We're not going to just keep waiting. I do think that there's going to have to continue to be discussions. It needs to be sort of this always present conversation of what's going on and looking at things, both from an architectural standpoint, from facilities. What are we hearing? Where are the perceived needs, right? And then trying to help prioritize those, right? And that's what the architects will help, because they'll at least be able to give some estimates, like what does this look like? Well, this is probably the estimate of to do X, Y, Z. It doesn't mean everything has to stop between now and next June, right? When your new person's in place, but it doesn't just mean that there's a lot that's going on right now. Just trying to, again, kind of get things into order and bringing on 2 new boards. And again, things are moving ahead with them. We just need to get everything done. So if they can come in August or September, that'll be a great opportunity to at least say, hey, here's where we're at in the process, start providing ongoing feedback, right? Because and that may be some things that also at Triple I conference, for those who go, is to go to some of those sessions on both referendum planning, but also building projects and looking at some of those things. So it's a great opportunity to, again, talk to other schools and see other places on how they've done and what has been successful. So, but again, I think the important part is when you're talking about future plans for the district, there's the overarching thing, right? We're a small district, oh, but we're outgrowing, our elementary schools in particular. What do we do? Do we just keep adding on, 4 and 4s, right, or 2 by 2s? And the answer in the long term, hopefully, is no. But
We don't have too much room for those anyway.
right,
I mean,
you're limited in some of your elementary schools for you to
Right.
be able to put any more stuff on there. So, but maybe there's a church for sale, right? I mean, so there's always there may be creative looking, right, at things of how to resolve certain things. So we'll just have to continue working on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to steal Dan's thunder, but the track is failing. And so, again, we only have limited funds, and he'll be discussing that, but that's in the millions. So, again, we need to look at where we want to spend the money. So, I mean, he'll probably be coming in August with that, so more information to come, but, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great that we're doing a study to look at the track and the stadium comprehensively, but I'll be really curious to see what those recommendations, again, in the price tag are, because, again, I can't disagree at all that redoing that track is a need. Is everything else actually a need? That's the question. And again, like you said, Jeff, is that the best way to spend our resources that we do have? So, but all good stuff.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see what the architects come back with as a master plan. I think that's really what a lot of us are really wanting right now, but unfortunately it does take, like Kyle said, it does take some time. It's going to take them time to get used to our district, to understand what our needs are, to look at all of our facilities, to look at our growth, and then come back to us with that. And in every presentation, I think every architect said the same thing. It's going to take us months to get a comprehensive plan and a master plan together. So I'm excited to see that.
And I'm expecting that there's going to be options within these plans, right? How do you address grade school space? Is it additions? Is it what we've talked about? Is it a new elementary school in another manner? Kind of almost good, better, best scenarios. And then if it does become a referendum ask, workshopping that with the community to see where everybody's at and take everybody's temperature, I think is going to be super important.
Any more on future plans? The next thing we have is discussion on retention and culture. I know there were some comments and some questions regarding this. So any board discussion on retention and culture within, not just within the board, but also the district itself?
Yeah, I brought this up again. I was just a little worried. I thought there was one person who was supposedly bringing bad culture into the district. Now that she's gone, it doesn't seem like culture has gotten much better, and retention definitely hasn't gotten much better, seeing that 50% of our administration is gone. Other key people have left. Mandy's done in 2 weeks. I'm glad Angie's here. She's great. But yeah, there's just a lot more turnover than I was anticipating. So I'm just, again, wondering what the plan is. Because again, we just can't sit around for a year and wait for things to get better, hopeful, So I just wanted to know, what your plan is kind of, or, what we want to try and do over the course of the next months to, hopefully change things a little.
I can jump in. Yeah. I think it starts with us a little bit. I think that as a board, we've gone from being relatively quiet in the first, couple meetings that we had to being able to sit down and discuss and respect each other's opinions, right? I think we all come from very different backgrounds, different careers, different families. And, I think as community members and as board members, it starts with us being able to come together with those varying backgrounds and having to focus on the kids, right? The focus has to stay on our children. And I think sometimes if we lose that focus, then other things can, things can get clouded, and we might have, more of an issue with retention or culture or things like that. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's I'm brand new to this. I think everybody knows that I'm brand new board member, brand new president. Just really trying to, at the end of the day, work together with everyone that we have in our district, with community members, with stakeholders, with our teachers, with our administration, with board members, and find common ground on focusing on the kids. What's going to be best for our kids now, what's best for our kids in the future. And I've been extremely encouraged by our conversation as a board as of late, and I hope that that continues. And I'm hoping that as we, as a community, really just narrow in on focusing on our kids, I hope that all of us can kind of come together and put aside any differences that we have and just really, really keep that focus. That's just kind of my 2 cents on it and what I hope to continue.
My take on it is, you know, this might be totally off the wall, but if there's a perceived retention or culture problem, is the perception of what we see as a lot of symptom of a greater problem, and do we actually know what the problem is, if there is a problem, or is it just perception is not necessarily reality? I realize there's a lot going on, and consistency and stability is key for this board and the administration and superintendent, and sitting through a lot of the superintendent search firms, they had all kind of mentioned these, you know, the survey and the town hall and getting that feedback from the community. I guess one question, I mean, we'll have that information going forward once these guys hit the ground running here this fall, but I guess what keeps us from doing our own town hall? Like, I think as a board, I think we owe it to the community. If there's a perceived culture problem within the staff, and that's affecting staff, or it's affecting administration and or retention, we can hire the best people in the world, and if we can't keep them, it's kind of pointless. So to just keep churning, you know, applicants and you have no tenure there without addressing actually what the problem is, do we even know what the problem is?
Right.
That's a question I have. I mean, as a new board member that's not totally versed in all of the history, it's like, what is the problem? Is there a problem? Or is it, you know, perception versus reality? That would be my suggestion is because if we don't understand it, how are we going to staff it? We still have to staff the administration. We have to staff a superintendent. You know, there's a lot of problems that can fix themselves, but most of them have to be staffed. You know, the old saying is you got to staff the problem. And right now we're short. You know, and I think that plays into, that was, not to go back to the old item or the previous item, but when you get into these facilities and expansions and growth, and it's like there's growth in registration, and we could build the biggest, beautiful buildings in the world, but if we can't fill them with competent staff and retain them, it's going to be a giant empty building that's going to cost us a lot of money. So it's a very delicate balance, in my opinion, between that staff and that culture and that retention and the consistency that we in the community all expect, but how do we get there? And to just keep going back, and I think maybe it's a different look. Maybe we ask questions we've never asked. Maybe we hold a town hall that we've never held before, and maybe it's our own survey. Maybe it's meeting with teachers and staff that are still here. And I know we're going through the negotiations and stuff now, but that shouldn't stop that conversation, in my opinion. That's a totally separate issue.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think a town hall's good. We haven't had one in a long time. To get people, I mean, we'd have to figure out obviously how to run it, you know, organize. I mean,
Yeah, maybe
you don't want it chaotic. But yeah, I mean, how do people feel, you know, staff included? You know, it's a fine line. You need competent people. You need to hold them accountable. Every job you have, you're held accountable by your boss. So, you know, my boss holds me accountable. I might think they're a jerk. That doesn't mean they're a bad boss. I mean, you know, I have my job to do. So, you know, and we need good teachers, good leadership, good administration for the kids. I mean, that's ideally, like, you know, you go back to that. It can't be a free-for-all, you know. You can't be loved by everybody, because then the students aren't going to be taught well. you know, education's gonna decline. So, yeah, I like that idea, Chad.
You know, in my experience is, there's that, there's a, in our business, we find that there's this boardroom Teflon that we have to make sure that we constantly break, that we can, you know, find ourselves in these boardrooms and conference rooms, and we think we know what the problem is, and we look out the window, and then there's this whole other group that chuckles because they know that we have no idea. So, I mean, in my experience is, if you really want to know what the problem is, you got to get out of the boardroom and you got to go find it, and you got to ask questions and asking the right questions, and you got to give people a comfortable forum to answer those questions. You know, that's the downside to a town hall, is control and staying on topic. Sometimes just private one-to-one small meeting kind of situations with teachers and staff and administration, and, you know, kind of like a coffee talk. It's like,
You know, Chad, I do work for a number of municipalities, and a couple of them actually, I think they take it to a whole other level, but in addition to their regular village board meetings, they have a monthly or every other month, I think they call it a community coffee or something. It's posted as a board meeting, and it gives an opportunity for that two-way dialogue that's hard to do in one of our normal meetings. I mean, we do have public comment, but obviously that's one way. If we could start to set something up like that, I mean, there's a lot of precedent for how those can work, what the ground rules are, how people agree to engage and interact with us. I mean, these are things that have been solved before, and I'd love to see us start to do it, and maybe, I don't think it has to be every month, but if it's on a regular basis and our community and all of our stakeholders know that they're going to have that opportunity to come talk to us, and we are able to respond to them, I think that's going to go a long way.
I mean, any politician, state rep holds office hours, they're legally required to. You know, and I think it behooves us, I agree with you 100%, Andy, that I think it does the same thing for us. You know, what that forum looks like. This is a real reset opportunity, in my opinion. I think we all kind of realize that as a community, and to have new principals and a new superintendent and oncoming staff, and there's that turnover, the board, we have a new member that we have to still choose. It's almost a completely new board in the last 24 to 36 months. So I think the opportunity is there. You know, and I think we need to just not shy away from having some hard conversations.
Yeah.
So one of the things to consider is a couple things, because the conversation has been good, right, and looking at that. I think to look at, as opposed to full board, and everybody always wants to be everywhere, right, but the reality is that you all are employed with jobs and families and stuff. And while you've taken on this responsibility, right, there's a realistic aspect of, like, sometimes just people aren't always available. One of the things that some places will do during times is, as opposed to whole boards, because you can meet as two people, right?
Like a rotating
And do a
pair.
rotating type of thing where it's not an official meeting, right, but it's a two-person, and you kind of pair up and go. And that can be really beneficial, because it's a little different format, right? Because when you're here as a board, you are at the board table and you are a board, right? When it's just two of you, you're board members, right, who are listening and able to bring things back.
It creates a personal aspect to it.
Right.
And to Andy's point, you can have a conversation.
Yeah, right.
And you're not limited by this, like, cloak of formality, and you have all these different opinions, and I think it'd be welcoming for the community. I think it'd be easy for somebody to sit down as two individuals and have a conversation with whoever shows, and, you know, if it starts immediately or it's quarterly, you know, I think it's, if we've never done it, it's one of those, then I think that needs to go on the list of things that we do. I mean, I think it's part of the, we've done a lot of things well, and then there's some things that this community and district has struggled with, and some of which might be why we're in the situation we're in.
I mean, I know when we're doing the referendum, we had the different plans. in different rooms, and board members floated between it. So it's like if, I don't know how it would work, but if you had different topics in this town hall, you could almost do that, and have a board member there and a board member there, and you could rotate or float or whatever, If a board member can't make it, so what, it's like you said, everybody has their own responsibility. So, I mean, that's another option too. You have a couple nights at different schools. So it's more convenient for parents and the community members too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and having places, taking them to places where people are, right, is, even, again, in the district, you don't have a library per se, but, the schools are kind of the community centers of the various neighborhoods, right? So that's it's an engaging thing, right? It's about engagement.
That's great, going out to meet people rather than having them come to our boardrooms, so to speak. I think it seems like a little thing, but it's a big deal.
Makes a huge difference, yeah. Yeah, and the difference, just, to remember, the difference between your Representative X, right, is that Representative X is his own person, right, going out, but you guys are a board, and so that just adds a complexity to the process, and just to be creative, right, and thinking about what's the best way to try to meet that. And there's always, there's the initial, we want to do what this wants to happen, right? I don't think it has to be like a monthly type of thing. That's probably a little bit much, but I do think as you're looking at something, think of what's like timing, what would work. We can help with some, thinking through some processes of what that looks like. You do want to have a structure to it. Yeah, and so there's some things to, I made some notes, and I'll talk to Griff, as well, and then just figure out, what some of those dates look like.
It'd be nice to do it before the next school year starts.
Yeah, something in
I
the
think
summer.
that needs to be
Yeah.
part of the reset.
Here in the town halls, it sounds like this is kind of more of like meeting with the community kind of thing. How do we meet, or how do we do it then with teachers and staff? What does that look like
I
to
think
kind
that's
of get the culture there?
Yeah, I guess procedurally, I mean, I don't know the process, but I mean, I think we need to start there as opposed to the community. I mean, if there's a perceived retention and culture problem, I think we need to start with the teachers and the staff.
It has to.
Yeah.
Because right now, we're out of superintendent, we're out multiple principals, and as you're saying, there's a culture thing. I don't know what it was beforehand. I don't know why it's still going on, but this is an entirely new board. We're looking for entirely new administrative staff that has everyone's best interests, teachers, support staff, students, everybody. So that's what we need to build on. So wherever this culture that you keep referring to, that this should help out with us getting in front of each individual group and say, this is where we're at, this is what our plans are, what do you want from us?
I think the other question is, how do we work together on it? Not just us doing it, but how do we work together with all of those people to create whatever maybe culture we're looking for, or they're looking for as well?
Well, I think it also gives you the opportunity to look at, as a board, what culture do you want within the district, right? What are you wanting to lead? You don't have the day-to-day operational aspect of doing that, right? But you also can have a vision of, what does that look like? And you're a part of it, but just as the teachers are a part of it, right? Just as the staff is a part of it. And I think, Chad, as you said, right, you can hire a new person coming in, and you heard the tenure of many superintendents in
2.8 years in
right?
Illinois.
So 3 years, and stability, particularly at the building level, is important, and we haven't had that in this district, right? There's been a lack of consistency of administrators, and that's it's important at the top, right? But it's almost magnified at the building level, right? Because the building principal is the one who is on that day-to-day engaging and interacting with the staff, with the students, and honestly with the parents. I mean,
And change and consistency is like this double-edged sword too. I mean, there's districts close by here that have had tenured superintendents and, for a long, long time. And that's not necessarily a good thing either. I mean, organic change is healthy. It doesn't have to be a 2.8, but it doesn't have to be a 28.
Right.
Right.
A good average in the middle.
Yeah, and you can sustain that organic change amongst leadership and staff and still have the core of what you want to be, because once that table is set, it doesn't matter who comes in, because the masses are stronger than one. The theory that one person can ruin an entire culture, sometimes in my experience, is not necessarily always true, because if that culture is there, sometimes it's perceived that way, and then it's like, well, what don't we know? We don't know what we don't know, and I mean, and I think that's where we got to make sure that we go find that, because maybe it's something totally different, and we're working on the wrong thing, or we're addressing solutions and or
Coming up with
symptoms
answers
and
are
not
not, right.
necessarily the problem.
We're giving vaccines for the wrong
Yeah, exactly.
disease, right?
Also to realize too that we are not the ultimate fix-all. We are not the ones that have to fix everything. We choose a superintendent. The superintendent runs his principals. The principals run the schools. There's that chain of command. It all doesn't magically appear from this board.
Right.
So when we choose our superintendent, we take into factor what the teachers want, what the public wants, what everybody wants, and that's what we base our decision on.
It's good, really good discussion on those topics, so thank you, everybody. Next thing, the FOIA report is included in the board packet. And now I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you,
again
everybody.
for coming.
Thank you.